Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share. So let's dive right in. You know, when you love someone, you always try to see the best in them. Even when things get difficult, you hold on to hope, convincing yourself it's just a rough patch. You'll figure things out. That's exactly what I did. My name is Duke, and I won't sit here and pretend my marriage was flawless. It wasn't. I had my own struggles. My business was crumbling. Finances were tight, and the stress of trying to keep everything together was eating away at me. Cassandra and I weren't as close as we once were. I noticed the emotional gap between us, but never in my wildest dreams did I suspect that distance existed because of someone else. So, I decided to fix things. Our anniversary was approaching, and I thought maybe all we needed was a special moment. Something to remind us why we fell in love in the first place. I planned a romantic dinner at an elegant restaurant, determined to make her feel cherished, to show her that despite life's hardships, I was still here, still fighting for us. What I didn't know was that Cassandra had already found happiness elsewhere. The night before our anniversary, we were at home, winding down after a long day. I was lounging on the couch while she was half watching something on TV. It was an ordinary evening, nothing out of the ordinary, at least, that's what I thought. Cassandra grabbed a towel and headed toward the bathroom for a shower. As she reached the doorway, I casually asked, "What are we eating tonight?" She paused for a second, glancing over her shoulder. "Just use my phone and order our usual," she replied before disappearing into the bathroom. A simple moment, something that had happened countless times before. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. As I unlocked her phone, a message notification appeared at the top of the screen. In a single heartbeat, my entire world shifted. "Damn, babe. I'll miss you this weekend, but I get it. Anniversary and all. Can't wait to see you next week." I read it once, then again, and again. For a brief moment, my mind went blank, refusing to process what I had just seen. But before I could even think, my hands moved on their own. I tapped the notification and opened the conversation. And that's when I saw everything. I wasn't prepared. The messages stretched back for months, each filled with excitement, longing, and, worst of all, intimacy. My wife had told this man she wouldn't be available over the weekend because of our anniversary. And him? He wasn't upset. He understood. He was patient, already making plans for their next meeting. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through their conversations. Each message felt like a dagger to the heart, shattering every illusion I had left. She had shared her deepest desires with him. Fantasies, secrets, things she had never expressed to me, things she would never have done with me. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a fleeting moment of weakness. She had built an entirely separate life with this man, and yet every night, she still came home to our bed, pretending nothing had changed. Rage surged within me, but I knew I needed proof. Quickly, I began taking screenshots, every message, every picture, every sickening detail. Once I was done, I transferred everything to my phone, ensuring I had undeniable evidence in case she tried to erase it later. When I finally set her phone down, my heart was still hammering against my chest. I had uncovered the truth, but what I would do with it, I wasn't sure yet. My world had just been turned upside down, but I refused to react. Not yet. Meanwhile, Cassandra had finished her shower. She stood in front of the mirror, going through her usual nightly routine, moisturizing her skin, tying up her hair, humming softly to herself, completely unaware of the storm raging just a few feet away. She had no idea that everything had changed. After reading those messages, nothing in my life would ever be the same. I could have confronted her then and there. I could have unleashed all the anger and heartbreak burning inside me. But I didn't. I needed to think, to breathe. I walked back into the living room, grabbed the remote, and turned on the TV. I tried to focus on anything that could pull me away from the crushing reality I had just uncovered. But no matter what played on the screen, my mind was consumed by the undeniable truth. My marriage, my trust, my entire world. It had all been a lie. When bedtime finally arrived, I still couldn't bring myself to enter that room. The thought of lying beside her, feeling her warmth, knowing what she had been doing behind my back, made my stomach churn. I stayed on the couch, lost in thought, but as the night stretched on and I assumed she had fallen asleep, I finally stood up. Slowly, I walked toward the bedroom, dreading every step. As I climbed into bed, she rolled over, resting her hand on my chest. Then, she lifted her head slightly and leaned in to kiss me goodnight. Instinctively, I pulled away, and before I even realized it, the words left my mouth. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Cassandra froze. Her lips hovered just inches from mine, her sleep-heavy eyes widening in an instant. Then, as if flipping a switch, she pulled back. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice unsteady, her expression carefully composed. I almost laughed, not because it was amusing, but because of how predictable she was, how effortlessly she slipped into denial, as if she truly believed she could manipulate her way out of this. I wasn't playing along. I stood up, reached for my phone on the nightstand, and opened the folder where I had saved everything. Then, in a steady voice, I began reading, line by line, word for word, her own messages to him. I barely got through the first few before she cracked. She lunged for my phone, desperation in her eyes. "Wait, just let me explain," she cried, trying to snatch it from me. But I was quicker. I stepped back, keeping it just out of reach. She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing, her hands covering her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out between ragged breaths. "It was a mistake, Duke, a moment of weakness." I said nothing. I was just tempted, that's all. I wanted to explore my desires. But you were always busy. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I tilted my head, studying her, then asked in the calmest voice I could manage, "How does it feel, knowing what you've done and still coming to kiss me with that mouth?" She didn't answer. What could she possibly say? She just sat there, frozen, trembling, tears spilling down her face. And me? I didn't care anymore. Without another word, I turned, walked out of the room, and left her alone in the wreckage she had created. I didn't know what my next step would be, but one thing was certain. I wasn't sleeping beside her. The days that followed were a blur. I wish I could say I had some grand revelation, that I woke up with clarity and a solid plan, but I didn't. Instead, I just existed. I went to work, came home, went to work again, came home again. I barely spoke. I barely ate. I barely thought. I just kept moving, trapped in the routine of a life that no longer felt like my own. And Cassandra? She pretended as if nothing had happened. She made attempts to restore normalcy, asking about my day, offering soft smiles, hoping I'd return them. She lingered close, brushing against my arm when she spoke, as if reminding me she was still there. At night, she slipped into bed beside me, but I never turned to face her. The distance between us felt vast, an ocean neither of us could cross. I was physically there, but mentally I was gone. When casual gestures failed, she tried harder. One evening, I came home late, the smell of food filling the house. My favorite meal. I walked into the kitchen and saw the neatly set table, the plates waiting, the wine poured. She stood there, hands clasped, eyes hopeful, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I merely glanced at the plate, then walked past it, straight to the bedroom. For the next week, she kept trying, but I could feel the desperation creeping in. She wanted me to react, to yell, to fight, to break the silence. Anything would have been better than the emptiness between us. I had nothing left to give, nothing left to say. I no longer saw her the same way, and in that moment I knew our marriage was already over. One evening after work, I called her into the living room. As she sat down, I wasted no time. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a set of divorce papers and placed them on the table in front of her. She stared at them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she lifted her gaze, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What is this?" she asked, though we both knew she didn't need an answer. My voice was steady when I spoke. "Sign these, or I tell everyone about your affair." For a split second, something flashed across her face, shock, maybe even fear. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew that if I wanted to, I could destroy whatever respectable image she had left. And then, right on cue, the tears came. She broke down in sobs, her hands trembling as she reached for the papers. I didn't say a word. I just watched as she unraveled, crumbling under the weight of what she had done. I imagined, in her mind, it was never supposed to end like this. Maybe she thought I'd eventually forgive her, that things would somehow return to normal, that time would blur the betrayal. But this wasn't something time could fix. She wiped her face, picked up the pen, and signed her name. With every stroke, our marriage faded away. And that was it. No screaming, no final pleas, just a quiet, inevitable ending to something that should have lasted a lifetime. Cassandra still had her career, her money. On the surface, she was fine. But what she lost was far greater. She lost the home we built, the husband who would have done anything for her, and worst of all, she lost the respect of those who would ask, "What happened to your marriage?" And when that question came, I wondered, would she tell the truth? You'd think that once the divorce was finalized, that would be the end of it, that she'd sign the papers, accept the consequences, and move on. But that's not what happened. At first, her messages were subtle. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A random meme she thought I'd find funny. A nostalgic text about the past. I ignored them all. Then, the messages grew longer. She told me she missed us, missed what we had, missed the way I looked at her, the way I held her, the way we could talk about anything. She told me she was lonely now, that no one understood her the way I did. It was almost laughable. Almost. The way she spoke. You'd think she was a grieving widow mourning the loss of a man she had cherished. As if she hadn't been the one to burn it all down. She wanted to play the victim. I wasn't interested. Then one day, she sent a message that actually made me pause. "We don't have to remarry. We can just live together again." I stared at my phone for a long time, rereading those words. I pictured her sitting wherever she was, actually believing I'd be desperate enough to take her back, that I'd be weak enough to let her crawl back into my life. So I sent one final message, one that left no room for misinterpretation. "Go cohabit with your young lover." That was it. The final nail in the coffin. She never replied after that. Maybe because she finally got the message. Maybe because she realized there was nothing left to say. Some people throw away love for fleeting pleasure. They gamble everything, their home, their marriage, the person who would have stood by them through anything, for a moment of excitement. And when they finally realize their mistake, it's already too late. I moved on, built something new for myself. And if you ever find yourself in my position, I hope you do the same. But let me ask you, what would you have done? Some might say I should have sought revenge, made her feel the same level of betrayal she inflicted on me. Trust me, the thought crossed my mind. But in the end, I chose to walk away. No second chances, no drama, just silence. What about you? If you discovered your partner had been living a double life, how would you handle it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who might be ignoring the signs, share the story with them. They might need it more than you think.